Hello, welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Time for another match preview. Newcastle face Wolves on Sunday at Molineux. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by John Gibson, and we're going to look ahead to that game and, of course, the impact of that defeat in the first leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final to Manchester City. John, welcome back to the show. Have you recovered from Tuesday night?
Not at all. Not at all. Disillusioned, depressed even, but much better for hearing your sweet dulcets, Andrew. It's a little bit of a lift there because we need a lift at the moment, don't we?
Yes, everyone down in the dumps about that defeat to Manchester City. But I'm feeling rather positive, even if it is led by blind faith. It's just one game. It's 90 minutes of football. Anything can happen. But we'll talk about that, John, in a few weeks' time. The question I want to ask you to begin with ahead of Wolves is, what do you think the mood will be like inside the Newcastle United camp heading into Sunday?
Oh, they will be deflated big time because the last thing they were probably expecting is to actually lose. It was a matter of could we get a narrow victory to take something down there that we could really hold on to, or at least a draw and make it a one-off knockout cup tie. But to lose 2-0 at home, and it could easily have been 3-0, but for VAR, is massive, and it's no good wrapping it up any way you like. It's going to depress and deflate them as much as it's going to depress and deflate us, because really that has made the whole semi-final a different ball game totally.
But, and I accept what you're saying, it is a devastating defeat. It makes it tough in a few weeks' time. But it wasn't a thumping. It wasn't a hammering. Newcastle had chances. And really, if you look at the game in a whole, you would argue they probably had more chances than Manchester City to get a goal, to get the lead. And is that the positive you take from it, John, that actually on the night they were probably punished for being wasteful in front of goal rather than, like I say, getting a hammering?
No, it's not a positive for me at all. Good sides win. And the bottom line is, whatever we say about, we had the chances and how many corners against their corners and free kicks against their free kicks, and the wind was blowing in the wrong direction a minute from time and the ball blew in the back of the net. Sorry, Bonnie lad, the score is Newcastle 0, Manchester City 2. And every time we play a alleged big side at home, this invincibility at home, this wonderful home record we've got, bursts. We played Arsenal at home and lost. We've played Manchester United at home and lost in the semi-final, much more important than the Premier League game. We played Barcelona at home and lost. We played Liverpool at the beginning of the season when they were on the upward trajectory and lost. We've lost the big games. And, that doesn't give us a lot of hope, and is the realistic score. You say we had a lot of chances and probably more chances than them. Well, when I was at Gateshead and I was talking to my manager, I always just say, excuse me, don't give me how many chances we had. We missed them, and missing them is bad play. If you miss chance, what we said did in 4 minutes changed the game. When he was completely in with a chance of scoring and didn't even hit the target, it was the same as his miss the previous game inside the first 5 minutes. When you're playing somebody like Manchester City and an opportunity comes along, clear cut, you must take it because you're not going to get too many opportunities. We didn't take it. I don't think that we can take a lot of positives out of a 2-0 home defeat in the semi-final of the Cup when you're the holders. I don't think there's a lot of if to be taken. And whether it's a shellacking or not, the point is, it is virtually, if we are realistic, Andrew, it is virtually means we are out of the Carabao Cup. Because we've got to go down there for the second leg. Howe's taken Newcastle United down to Manchester City 5 times. He's lost 5 times. We haven't scored a solitary single goal and we've let in 14. Yet wait a minute. Yet we're going to talk about us winning by 3 clear goals down there. We blew it up here, and there's no consolation for me or anybody that's realistic about the situation to say, "Oh well, we had a lot of chances," or "We did pretty well in build-up." Excuse me, they controlled the game and we lost.
But the reason I ask that question is because I'm thinking about the mood going into Sunday, and is it better to go in saying we've lost fine margins, if Wissa put that chance away, if Wissa doesn't hit the bar and it goes in, we'll be sitting here looking ahead to that second leg in a totally different feeling than it would be to go in and say, Man City rocked up on Tyneside and we lost, 5-1, 6, whatever, got absolutely thumped. I'm just trying to kind of get a feel for the better outcome in many ways for the players heading into Sunday.
Well, let them be realistic. Let them realise what happened, and let them realise they've got to get a grip of this season before it slips away from them. And that's the attitude to take into it, not pretend that we suddenly got unlucky and on another day it could have been a different result. You must be realistic and say, right, lads, we can put this right. And we have got to put it right, because if we don't start putting it right now, this season is going to slip away from us. I said in the build-up to this, Andrew, that this was a chance to make history. This was a chance to make an up-and-down season, finish on an up and be positive, etc., etc. Well, now they are, in my humble opinion, at the crossroads for this season, because what is going to happen in the rest of the season? At the moment, our away form is atrocious. We've won 3 away games this season, only 2 in the Premier League, not against top opposition, Everton, which was a very good result, and Burnley, who are doomed, the same as Wolves are doomed, and we beat Union in the Champions League, who are championship class. So our away form, although we won our last away game, is not good. This season will now be defined by what happens on the road. Start in the next couple of weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, starting with Wolves, which is a good start because they're a poor side. But starting with Wolves, we've got to go down and do the business, because in all competitions, we are facing now key away games. In the Premier League, we must get back on the horse against Wolves and win. And then we've got the second leg of the Carabao Cup away to Manchester City. Tough. We've got the FA Cup away to Aston Villa. Tough. We've got the Champions League away to Paris Saint-Germain. Tough. That's life at the top. Life is tough. We've got to meet that full on, full frontal, and get as much out of those away games as we can. Because those away games I've talked about, Wolves, Manchester City, Villa, and Paris Saint-Germain, will determine where we are for the rest of this season.
And I've seen a few people on social media saying that this is maybe the biggest game of the season coming up because of what comes after. Do you subscribe to that?
The biggest game of the season was the one we've just had, when we could have gone to Wembley. That was the biggest game of the season. But I take what the thinking is behind that. We can't do anything about the past, and we lost that one. It is the biggest game of the season simply because it's the next game. And we have got to confirm that our away form is not as bad as it has been. To be truthful, this is the best match we could have. If we accept we've got to be away, and having been at home so much, and we'll come after Wolves to 2 more home games, that we've got to play away, then there's not a better one than Wolves, because they are bottom of the pile in the Premier League. You don't take anything for granted these days. We've got to safeguard against any humiliation, etc., etc. But this is the best one we can have, because if we don't beat Wolves, how good what's the result we're going to get at Man City? What's the result we're going to get at Aston Villa? What's the result we're going to get at Paris Saint-Germain? This is important, because this must be won to give us any sort of hope. Again, it's a seesaw season. If we win at Wolves, we're not back on the horse and riding on Europe, etc., etc. We're just steady in a rocking boat. But yes, it is important because it's the next one.
Any concern about Wolves' form of late, unbeaten in the last three, picked up their first victory against West Ham? Any concerns?
No. My concern is about Newcastle United. I've got no concern about them. They're still bottom of the league. They're still 14 points off of safety position, whatever they did. They may have scored 6 in the FA Cup, but look who they were playing. My concern, Andrew, is not about Wolves. My concern's about us. What are we going to do? What's our attitude going to be like? How tired are we going to be mentally as well as physically? How deflated are we going to be? Are we going to be man or mouse? Are we going to be a man or a mouse? Are we going to go there and feel sorry for ourselves and perhaps get caught up in a whole nonsense and get beaten by a single goal? Or are we going to go there and say, listen, we are not going to let our season die. We are better than this. We're going to do something about it, and we're going to salvage something out the rest of the season. Or we're just going to go through the rest of the season on automatic pilot, or we're going to create what happens in the rest of the season, and that'll be shown at Wolves.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm kind of on a balance in my mind about this game on Sunday. Obviously, Newcastle will want them to win. The need to win to keep going up the table. But I think a lot of people are expecting a reaction to Tuesday. But I want a reaction, but I don't think it's kind of like a defining reaction, if that makes sense, because I still think there's 90 minutes of this tie. Yes, it's going to be difficult, but Newcastle aren't out of it. But do they need a reaction? Because it would be if they lose, it would define the rest of the season.
Absolutely. If we lose to Wolves, and haven't got the result that we got against Manchester City, what sort of way are we going to go into playing PSV Eindhoven in the Champions League in midweek, and then home again? Yes, but home to Aston Villa, who are currently as good as the teams I've just mentioned that have already won up here this season. So the only way to approach those two games is on the back of a win here. If we lose this one, having lost Man City, what's the mood going to be like for the games coming up?
Yeah. I tried to kind of maybe rephrase the question. Is Sunday just a run-of-the-mill Premier League game, as in Newcastle versus Wolves, on paper, on form, Newcastle should be winning that and bringing 3 points back at Tyneside? Or is it Newcastle United need a reaction because of what happened on Tuesday?
Yeah, it ought to be run-of-the-mill as much as a league game can be run-of-the-mill in all at a different level. But yes, Wolves is the one where you've got a real opportunity and ought to do it automatically. But it's no longer run-of-the-mill because the result with Man City was the worst possible, i.e. we lost at home. And lost by a margin, which makes the chances of going down there and getting through 100 to 1. I mean, where there's life, there's hope. But we're going to beat them by 3 clear goals on their pitch. I don't think we are, with our away form the way it is. And as harsh as that might sound, Andrew, it's called facing facts as opposed to called we live in a winter wonderland, and we're going to win 3-0 down there. Of course it's not over, it's only halfway, but it's by Jove, it's on the wrong side of the coin, and therefore we have to go to Wolves, not to right the wrong, because beating Wolves won't change our current position in the League Cup semi-final, and if we go out of that, and supposing we lost at Aston Villa in the FA Cup, then there's a big dent in the season, isn't it? Because there's the Champions League and the Premier League left, but there's certainly no trophies to be won then. So, it doesn't put everything right by winning at Wolves, but by Jove, losing at Wolves off puts things wrong, doesn't it?
Totally changes the momentum, doesn't it? If they win, then Tuesday maybe doesn't hurt as much. But if they lose, then you're looking at the bigger knock-on impact to the games coming up, like you say, PSV, Villa. It makes the next game even more important, doesn't it? So, yes, let's go out and get a win at Molineux on Sunday. You mentioned there about tiredness and fatigue, John. I mean, some of the players on Tuesday look absolutely knackered. So they're going to be grateful, aren't they, for a few days rest? And this is probably the longest rest they've had in quite a while.
Yeah, with the game being Sunday and the midweek game being Tuesday instead of Wednesday. So it is a rest, and they need that rest. And I think they need it mentally as much as physically, Andrew, because yes, they're physically tired of having put so much in, and the games with Leeds and Bournemouth just went on and on and on and on. But also the mental stress of playing those games, then getting a slapping against City, an unexpected 2 down, we would have been slightly disappointed to go down there with a draw. But to go down there with a 2-goal deficit is a mountain. I mean, they're being asked to climb Everest in sand shoes. It is so tough, it's untrue. So they do need the rest, and they need it as much for the mental scores as they do for the physical scores, I would think, because they've got to get their head clear of any fog that result will bring. And it's only human nature that it will, because the treasured cup that they won at Wembley and the homecoming with 300,000 people and seem a million miles away now after that result. And so it is tough. But they've got to, I mean, that's what professional football is all about. That's why you get the big money. You've got to be able to pull yourself together and go again.
Indeed. Ladies and gents, just a reminder, this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Do click the link in the podcast description box and you get a discount offer on your NordVPN plan. One subscription can be used across 10 devices and there's no risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. It's perfect if you're browsing on public Wi-Fi, whether you're on the train, on the bus, in a restaurant or a cafe. If you've got NordVPN switched on your devices, then you have that added extra element of security of potential hackers and scammers lurking in the shadows. So do click the link and get your discounted offer. John, with the rest they've got, do you think Eddie will be torn between getting them on the training pitch and actually allowing them maybe to have, say, 2 days off because they've played so many games?
Oh, he's bound to be. He's bound to be. Because do you stick or do you twist? What do you do next? Because what you do next is got to prove to be right to give us a real chance. And they need both. Excuse me. They need both. They need a rest physically, like take a couple of days off. And they need to get on the training ground tactically and to blow the cobwebs away. So it is very difficult. You could do with a week and a half or a fortnight's rest, to be truthful, which is physically impossible because they've got to go again twice next week, having played Wolves. So it's between a rock and a hard place, isn't it? What you do, but it's as much mind games now as anything else with the players, because yes, there's tactics and can be tweaked. Yes, there's tactics that have got to be looked at, but they've also got to get the head clear of fog.
Let's look at the potential team then. Nick Pope will start in goal. Lewis Miley, right back. Chow, Botman, Hall, we would say, make up the rest of the defence. I think in the midfield is probably one which will cause a little bit of debate for some. Jacob Ramsey, especially in the first half, looked quite good. You had Bruno going off late on in the game. We can only assume that's down to a bit of tiredness and fatigue. Joe Tonali didn't have too many minutes, and Joe Linton, I felt, was probably, again, another good outing from him. So who would your midfield three be? Are we confident that Bruno will be fit enough to start on Sunday?
Yeah, because he almost forces himself to be in, doesn't he? He hates losing games, and he is the captain. He's the captain, courageous, and all that sort of business. And I think Joe Linton has brought a lot of his old physical power back to the midfield. So you would think he would start. It's no good keeping one eye on Eindhoven, because get this wrong in Eindhoven, it becomes an absolute banana skin, etc., etc. So it'll probably be Ramsey or Tonali with the two Brazilians.
I mean, Tonali obviously came off the bench and got 20 minutes or so. And he looked a very angry man, to be quite honest with him. He didn't I think it was Bernardo Silva, nearly wrestled him to the floor. That midfield three is going to be such an interesting pick. On the wings, I mean, we can assume it's going to be Anthony Gordon, Harvey Barnes, because Jacob Murphy picked up another injury. I mean, that was an interesting call in itself, down to fatigue with Barnes. And then you had Elanga coming off the bench and probably putting in his worst performance in a black and white shirt, which is quite difficult to do, given that he's not really putting any good performances since joining, other than maybe that Barcelona one or Everton outing. But on the wings, Barnes and Gordon for you?
Yeah, yes. When I say I'm afraid so, I don't mean that in Barnes' position, because Barnes has done magnificently for us. Gordon is a pale shadow for me, but as you say, Murphy I felt sorry for, because I thought he did well. Until he come off with his injury, I thought he was giving Ake a real bad time. And what I love about him is that when the ball's played to him and he's flying down the wing, he doesn't take 2 or 3 touches. He whips a cross in while they're still disorganised in the centre and makes it so dangerous. But he's got a hamstring. He's not going to make it the way he came off. And Elanga is a walking disaster. So you're going to go Barnes and you're going to go Gordon. It's who you go at centre forward after that. And quite frankly, whichever one you go with is not the perfect answer at the moment, because Voldemort is not a centre forward, never has been, though we always ask him to play there. He's a 10. And Wissa is having a rough old time at the moment. The one thing he's put in there to do, score goals, he's missed. He cornered the ball out 3 paces in the last 2 games. He's missed 2 absolute sitters in front of goal, all in the first 5 minutes. For me, he is well short at the moment. And you'd probably go with him, because then it doesn't affect the rest of the team as much, because he plays the way Newcastle United play. But he's well short of what we would want, and probably that's because he's played so little since last season ended. But he's missing chances, and centre forwards are always gauged on your goal. If you're a centre forward, you're gauged on goals. Ask Shearer, ask Supermac, ask Jackie Milburn, ask Les Ferdinand, ask Andy Cole. You're judged on goals. And at the moment, they're not going in for Wissa.
Yeah, I thought he looked particularly tired very early on against Man City. He wasn't doing the press. And he just looked like, in his face, he just looked like he needed to go to bed, to be quite honest with you. So with that in mind, I think he'll be on the bench on Sunday. Voldemort came off the bench, obviously, against City. And I was just really frustrated, because there was one ball in the box where he just, for whatever reason, just doesn't hit it first time. If he hits that first time, I think it's into the back of the net. And, there's questions to whether he's an out-and-out striker, and I don't think he is. And I think in that moment we saw that he probably isn't. And I think he will play on Sunday. But again, we're sitting here and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's the best of a bad option, but in many ways it is, because whoever you put into that side on Sunday, I don't think is either feeling good or is fit. With Wissa, doesn't look fit. I don't think Voldemort is in the best of spirits at the moment. It's a horrible choice for Eddie Howe to be in. And it's a really bizarre one as well, John, when you consider that both of them collectively, 125 million, 130 million.
I mean, we have paid that amount of money and we've still got a centre forward problem. We've spent that amount of money on 2 strikers, and we're sitting here in January, halfway through the season, and still talking about having a centre forward problem, because we have. Whichever one you pick for Wolves is not going to fill you full of reassurance. Not in the way that Shearer and Supermac did, not in the way that Alexander Isak did when he was here, before his mind got scrambled. We have a problem there. And the ironic thing, my friend, and we've just picked the team, and you're right, in the back 4 picks itself simply because there's nobody else. But our problem is we haven't got a centre forward that'll score goals, and we haven't got a back 4 that'll keep them out, because that was 2 goals against Man City. We had 3 against Bournemouth, 3 against Leeds, 2 against Chelsea, 2 against Spurs, and that was all at home. Our defence is absolutely like a bucket it's full of holes. So, I mean, not only have we got centre forwards that isn't scoring because Harvey Barnes is scoring all the goals, but we've got a defence that lets in a pile. They've let in at least 2 and sometimes 3 in all those matches I mentioned at home. So what pressure is on the forwards? The forwards have got to score at least 2 goals to get a draw when you're playing like that. So the goals we talk about the centre forward problem, and it is massive. But by Jove, at the moment, the defensive problems are just as massive.
Yeah. And I ask this question already knowing the answer, John, but we've obviously picked there the starting 11, and that's done. Even though it's in the January transfer window, because I have to say, I guess you're a bit like me. You're not expecting any new faces before Sunday.
No, not. I don't know if I'm expecting any new faces. Full point. I am because to a certain extent, I don't think they intended to do much business, if any business at all, this transfer window. But all of a sudden, with the injuries at the back, when you're looking at Shaw out for an eternity, Livramento out for an eternity, Byrne not ready to come back yet, although he's on the grass, Eddie's famous phrase, etc., etc. We are so stretched at the back with nobody riding over the brow of the hill, the cavalry, to save us, that we might well have to go in and try to get somebody, a right-sided centre half who can play in another position or whatever, another position as well. We need some help. And also, it's not a matter of Eddie just saying to himself, well, we're so thinly covered at the back, we just need one knock and we're done for. We're thinly covered, and what we've got are just leaking goals like it's raining every day. So it's not as if we're scared about one injury upsetting the way we are. We are already upset. We're already leaking goals. So we need somebody in there to stop that. The goals we are leaking are frightening, and the way we're leaking them is frightening.
Indeed. Well, that leads us on to the nice, friendly question of how Newcastle are going to do on Sunday.
Yeah. Well, I've said a lot of harsh things because I think that harsh things have to be accepted and have to be fronted, not as much by the fans, but by Newcastle United and by Eddie Howe and by Mad Dog and Graham Jones, etc., etc. Because we are at a crisis. We are at a crossroads where we turn left and everything's fine, but we turn right and we're in a cul-de-sac because we're coming up with a lot of big games that's going to define everything, the rest, as far as the rest of the season's concerned. However, what we've got here, Wolves, is an ideal opportunity to get another win away. They are awful. Yes, there's not an easy game in the Premier League. I've heard all that and I accept all that. But this is as easy as it gets. If you have the right attitude and if you have the right organisation and discipline and stick to your job, this is the sort of match. Our only double in the Premier League this season was Burnley, who are doomed. We can do a double here because we're beating them at home, and this lot are doomed. And we've got to get it right. It is so crucial. It is untrue. I think it will be tighter than it ought to be, but I do think we will win. And I don't think that puts everything right, I hasten to add, because I've just said the tests are to come. But if we don't beat Wolves, how are we going to beat Man City away? How are we going to beat Aston Villa away? How are we going to beat Paris Saint-Germain away? And they're the next ones, by the way. They're not just off sometime in the future. They are just about to happen. So we have to win this for the sake of morale, for the sake of everything else. And if we get knocked out of the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, heaven forbid, but the next 2 matches are against quality away from home. And if we're out of those 2, we've only got the Champions League and qualifying for the Champions League left. And to qualify for the Champions League or any European competition, you've got to get 3 points at Wolves without a shadow of doubt, because Aston Villa at home, the next league game, is not easy. I think we'll win a very tight and very nervous game without giving a great display whatsoever. But I'm not bothered about the great display. I'm bothered about the result. And I'm going to take us to win 2-1. Because of our defence, I cannot in the record of goals against. I cannot say is keeping a clean sheet down there, though that's a good place to keep a clean sheet. I'm going to take 2-1. But the most important thing is that we win. And we must win. If we don't beat these, who do we beat away from home?
I'm going to take a quote from you, John. I'm going to go for a win because I didn't even think about a defeat. And I think Newcastle will win. What is in the back of my mind, though, is that how confident we were going into that West Ham game, and then we lost. And over the last couple of seasons, when we've been confident, and actually this time around, the confidence isn't flying high. But maybe when you speak to an opposition fan, and we'll have the view from the opposition from the Talking Wolves podcast later in the week, I imagine actually he'll be quietly confident of getting something, which doesn't also sit well with me. But the point being, on paper, when we face these teams where we go, we should be winning, we have to win, sometimes Newcastle don't win and they slip up, and that is slightly poking me somewhere in the back of the head. But as I say, I can't forecast anything other than a win, so I'm going to go for a win. Hopefully it's a good performance, but like you say, the win is what matters, and it's going to be close, though. Definitely going to be close, but a win puts us onto a good footing ahead of a busy few weeks for Newcastle United. But a win, hopefully, down at the Molineux. John, thank you very much, as always, for providing the match preview to you guys watching and listening. Do get into the comments and let us know your thoughts on anything that we've discussed, particularly the viewpoint that Newcastle United have a striker crisis. I'm intrigued to know what you think the remedy would be to that. And me and John will see you guys next week previewing the visit of PSV to St James's Park. Enjoy the weekend, and here's the 3 points for Newcastle United against Wolves.